guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for clicking on this video. Today I just wanted to kind of sit down and just have a little chit chat about some of my all-time favorite books. Pretty much since I've gotten back into reading as an adult after I graduated college. And yeah, I kind of got back into reading in 2021, so it's been like 3 years since I started reading again. I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about some of the books that I like. If people recommend, people ask me my favorite book, kind of depending on my mood, it's gonna be one of these books. Of I think 12 books, 12 or 13, I'm not sure exactly. I have 11 physical books, and then I have 2 of them that I don't own physical copies of. The book that kind of got me back into reading, it wasn't the first one that I read after I graduated college. The first series that I actually picked up was one that I'd owned. The first book, like since I was in high school, is the Uglies series. And it was like an easy, quick read. And it kind of like, I enjoyed it, but it's definitely not one of my like top books. The first book that got me like back into reading and like loving reading and just interested in like BookTube and like just talking about books on social media and learning about books and just kind of learning what was popular was Six of Crows. So as you can tell, I have the special edition. I have the paperback up on my shelf as well, but I loved this series so much that I had to get the special editions of the books, and I don't even necessarily know where to start. It was a book that I think I randomly picked up at Barnes & Noble, and I kind of read the back and I was like, that seems intriguing. I remember just being so excited every second of reading it. I remember parts of it, like reading it out loud to my boyfriend and being like, could you imagine like seeing this in a movie scene? Like, this would be so cool. And I definitely want to try to find more books that are kind of like this, of like, I don't know, I think it's fun reading books that aren't necessarily about heroes. Like, it was all kind of a group of outcasts, of people who other people saw as criminals, as bad people, coming together. The main character brought together a group of people that he'd heard about from different locations and different areas, and they just all had different skills and abilities and backgrounds that helped along this journey. The part that just immediately made me want to read the book was the back, and it says that he's offered a chance at a deadly heist that could make him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but he can't pull it off alone. A convict with a thirst for revenge, a sharpshooter who can't walk away from a wager, a runaway with a privileged past, a spy known as the Wrath, a heartrender using her magic to survive the slums, and a thief with a gift for unlikely escapes. And so is this group of just, like I said, kind of outcasts, and the journey that they went on, and not just this book but the second one as well. I just immediately fell in love, and I know that they kind of like combined the TV show with Charlotte Bone, and I haven't seen any of it yet, but I wish that they would just make a strictly like Six of Crows TV show, movie, whatever. This was definitely the one that I credit to reigniting my love for reading. I read this back in 2021, so it's been 3 years since I read it, and I would absolutely love to reread it at some point. So I don't know, maybe I'll do that at some point, like rereading some of my favorites. But I don't know, I would definitely put this as one of my top favorites of all time, but there's a lot of like tough contenders for it to go against all in this list. And the next one also has a special place in my heart, and that is Harry Potter. I read the first like 4 of them growing up multiple times. I would like restart it and get to like a certain point constantly, whether it was the 3rd book or the 4th book. But last, I think it was in 2021 as well, I reread the first 4 books and then read the rest of the Harry Potter series. And this is just one of those books that will forever have a special place in my heart. I remember being a kid and stealing these books from my brother because he owned them, And I remember my parents being like, you don't need 2 copies of the books, like your brother owns them all. So I never owned my own copies of them, so it was really hard for me to read them because, as all siblings are, it was constantly like, he wouldn't let me borrow his books, and then he would, and then he wouldn't. And so then I ended up, when, I think not, maybe right before I graduated from college for my birthday, my parents bought me the full box set because they were like, we know you've wanted this your whole life, you're moving halfway across the country, so now you can have your own copies of the books, which was really sweet. There's just something so special about Harry Potter with the movies, and it's just such a wonderful community, and it's so hard for me to pick a favorite from the series. I think if I had to pick, I would maybe go with the 5th one, The Order of the Phoenix, just because I think that one was the most different than the movie. Like, I feel like they cut out so much of the book for that movie, and so there was just so much more that I learned in the book, and so it stood out to me. But movie-wise, I will always say my favorite is The Prisoner of Azkaban, the 3rd one. Harry Potter will just, it's always going to be so special to me. Moving on from there, I think I'm gonna go by genre. I think I'll start with romance because it's like the most out of my comfort zone. I don't typically reach for romance books, but I feel like, not surprising to the world, but 2 of my favorites are actually by Emily Henry, and they are Beach Read and Happy Place. I've read People We Meet on Vacation, and I didn't like that one nearly as much. These 2 were so good. It is like such an atmospheric book. It's about January and Gus, and they're both authors of like different genres, and they were like, I think they were like college rivals. Like, they were both like the top ones in their class. They were constantly competing for like the higher grades in their writing classes, but they write completely different genres. I think she writes romance and he writes like mystery or like nonfiction or something. I don't remember exactly. Historical fiction, something. And they were absolutely like hated each other, and they end up vacationing in next door like houses. January goes there because it's her father's old house, and apparently Gus just happens to be the neighbor. And so then they're both trying to write their books, and they run into each other, and they challenge each other to write a book in the other one's genre, because they were like, you can't write what I write. And so then they go on adventures to help inspire the other one in the genre that they're supposed to be writing. This one I just read this year, but it quickly climbed to, I think, being my favorite Emily Henry book. But again, I'd have to reread Beach Read to know for sure. Harriet and Wynne, and they are, or were, engaged to be married. They were college, like, couple. They met in college through like mutual friends, got engaged, and then they broke off their engagement for reasons that you don't really know until you read the book. They haven't told their friends, and so then they're supposed to be going on one last trip to one of the other friends' summer house that they used to go to every summer, and they haven't told the friends, so the friends still think they're engaged, and then they find out it's the last summer they're supposed to ever be there, and they decide they can't ruin their last summer there, so then they have to pretend to still be engaged and still be in love. And it just opens a lot of feelings and just makes them think a ton about why they broke things off and what was going on in their lives. They were both going through a number of very complex things in their personal lives, and I feel like reading this just resonated with me. I understand it's not for everyone, but for where I'm at in my life and where I've been, I feel like it just hit differently. Honestly, I think it was less about a romance and more about like learning to love yourself and finding who you are. These are like 2 of my top romances. The last one I don't have a physical copy of, and it's another one that I read just this year, just a few months ago, because I've definitely gotten into more of like a romancer. I'm more interested in romance books now, and that is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Listen to the audiobook of that one. Emma and Justin, I think, are their names, and they meet in like an online thread about people who have like horrible luck dating, and how whenever they break up with someone or someone breaks up with them, that person goes on to find the love of their life. And they decide to follow the rules of like what has worked in the past for this I don't think they call it a curse, but this curse to take place. So like they have to go on a certain number of dates, or they have to kiss or whatever, to try and break the spell on both of them, that hopefully they'll go on these dates with each other and then go on to find the loves of their lives. Justin, the things that he did just to like show little ways that he cared was what truly got me. It was like more than just, again, there was a little bit more depth going on in the book as well. That was like a complete back plot of what like was happening with these characters. Moving into like mysteries and thrillers. I'm not really a thriller reader, so these are definitely more like mysteries. My most recent favorite, which is The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. I know it's kind of a polarizing book. Like I kind of guessed what was gonna happen, but the twists still were enough that I wasn't like bored by it. I was still enjoying it. I read this one in probably just a couple of days. Just such a fast-paced read. Like some of the chapters are literally like 2 or 3 pages long. So it was like every time I'd be like, oh, one more chapter, it'd be 2 pages. I'd be like, oh, one more chapter, and I would just keep going. This is about Nina, and she is a housemaid for a wealthy family. Try to be the best she can because she can't lose this job. She needs the money. And so she makes sure she cleans everything, cooks for them, runs all their errands, whatever they need to do. She tries to be like the perfect housemaid. But then like the wife starts making things extra difficult for her. She is a live-in maid, so she lives with them, and so she kind of gets to know the family, and she never is away from them. Like she's constantly there. And I had picked this book up, and it took me a little bit to read it, but I went to Barnes one day and saw like a whole like end cap of other Freida McFadden books, and there was a couple of them that sounded really interesting to me. I was like, no, I need to read like one of her books first before I pick up more of them, in case I don't like her writing. But needless to say, I loved her writing. I read the second one and was like very pleasantly surprised with the second one. It was like just as good as the first one, which I didn't think it would be. I haven't read the third one yet, but I bought a couple other books by her that I'm really excited to read this fall, and I pre-ordered one of her new books that's coming out on my birthday. I am just loving her writing, and so that's why I wanted to include this. Isn't necessarily my all-time favorite mystery, no, but I think that this is a really good one for people kind of like getting into reading, because it's such a fast-paced book, or like if you're in a reading slump, I feel like this would be perfect. Pretty much every chapter ended on some sort of like mini cliffhanger that made you want to keep reading it. Like, is it fast-paced? Like, do I want to keep turning the pages constantly, and are the twists twisty enough for me? Like, am I surprised, or did I predict everything that happened? My next favorite mystery is like a psychological mystery, and it was one of my like first kind of mystery books that I read. I absolutely loved it, and it is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. And this is about Alicia, who was married to a famous photographer. One day, apparently she just shot her husband 8 times and then never spoke a word about it. And so she's been in like a psychiatric hospital. No one's been able to speak to her. Yeah. Theo's a psychotherapist, and he is trying to get to the bottom of the story, so he tries to go and talk to her. And this was another one that just had twists around every turn. Like, I did not at all expect the end of this book. Definitely, this one was nice because it was a lot more like on the psychological side. This is a fantastic book, another good one for people kind of like just getting into the genre, I think, because there's enough going on. It's fast-paced, and his writing is just so good in this book. Like I said, I've read The Maidens and it was good. I just didn't like it as much as The Silent Patient. The Silent Patient was better. And then I just recently read The Fury and I didn't like that one nearly as much. The writing on that one was just a little different for me. So then my last mystery one I think is probably my favorite. This one was a little bit more of like a fun mystery than The Silent Patient. Like I said, that one was more of like a psychological, like made you think one. Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This was one that I kind of just randomly picked up from Book of the Month. Another one that I absolutely did not expect the ending of this one. Like I kind of had like little ideas on like small things that were gonna happen, but the twist at the end was so good, and it made me immediately go and pick up a couple other of her books, and they were all so good as well. This one was just my favorite of hers that I read. And this one is about the Darker family, and they're all going to their grandma's house for her birthday. They all, like, none of them have spoken in, I don't know how long, like I think it was decades, none of them have spoken. And they all get together at this tiny little island house that their grandma lives at. And then, of course, a storm rolls in, power goes out, and somebody ends up dead. The grandma died and they were the only ones on the island, so they have to try to figure out who killed her, and of course she was the grandma, so they're trying to figure out, like, was it for her inheritance, like what's going on. The dynamics between the family was so messy and it was so good. Like it was messy in the best way possible. Another perfect like fall read. I love mysteries in the fall. And in a couple weeks I'm going to be posting my like fall TBR, and I'll probably have a bunch of like mysteries and thrillers on there, and I might include like a couple that like I've read that I think other people would enjoy in that video. Moving into the last genre, which is like already the biggest because the first two that I talked about were kind of like fantasy books, and the last four are fantasy books. I'm gonna give a shout out to ACOTAR. I enjoyed the series, don't get me wrong, I really liked it. However, I think what's telling about a person and their book taste is what their favorite ACOTAR book is, because mine was A Court of Wings and Ruin. I absolutely loved the third one. It was a lot more like heavy on the politics side of it than the romance side, and that is where like my fantasy taste lies. Like I like a subplot of romance, but I think if you liked ACOTAR and wish there was a world like that and you're not necessarily in love with the romance, then I feel like I have to recommend Throne of Glass, because this is by far my favorite Sarah J Maas series. Just the fact that there's so many books and you get to know so many characters, and there's so much depth and growth to each one of them, and it's a lot more than just like a romance underneath. There's so many other like things going on. This is another one where I don't think I could pick my favorite book in the series. Honestly, so many of them kind of tie together to me. They just all kind of formed one long book in my head because I read them all back to back. Kingdom of Ash is like a fantastic ending to a series. Did it break me? Yes. Did I sob? Yes, I did, right on the couch, and my boyfriend was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying? I feel like there isn't really much of an explanation needed for Throne of Glass. I feel like everyone kind of knows it. It's about a girl who is an assassin, and she has to like compete to become the king's champion in like a tournament with a bunch of people. Just know that it's amazing. And if you liked ACOTAR and you liked the concept of like the fantasy portions of ACOTAR, then you'll love Throne of Glass. If you liked ACOTAR just for the romance side of it and you didn't like the fantasy side, I would say this probably isn't a book for you. Between this and Harry Potter right now, they're like two of my top series. I'm not counting Six Sick Rose just because that's a duology. I don't know why I said that so weird, but The next one is another duology that I don't hear a ton about. I feel like I kind of hear it like pop up every once in a while of people picking up and reading it. And that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. It's another one, kind of like Six of Crows, where you're kind of almost following the villain. Like, it's making you question what makes someone a villain and what makes someone the hero. This book is about Victor and Eli, and they are college roommates, and they are just absolutely brilliant, and they're working on like research involving like when a mother like has her child trapped under a car and all of a sudden they can get superhuman strength and like lift up the car to save the baby, like these near-death phenomenons that cause like superhuman abilities. So it's kind of a fun mixture of like a normal fantasy book mixed with like, I'm not huge into like the Marvel, DC, like comics, movies, whatever. And reading this made me think that I would love watching more of those, but it's like a touch on like the superhuman side. It's not a complete fantasy. There ends up being a dispute between the two of them, and like their ideas on this research kind of go in different directions on how they should be experimenting on it. And I think, like I said, this is like, I don't want to say it's like a realistic fantasy or like magic realism, but it kind of feels that way just because at its core these are everyday people. I don't know, it's one that, like I said, I don't hear a ton of people talking about, but I wish it was recommended more. The last two that I want to talk about are, like, they're not quite my favorite books of all time quite yet, but they're my favorites of right now, and that's just because the series aren't completed yet. And that is Powerless and Fourth Wing. And I actually haven't even finished Fourth Wing yet. I have like 150 pages left so far, but with where I'm at right now, I can tell like it's already ranking like way up there. Like, these two series have kind of started off making me feel the way Throne of Glass made me feel when I was like in the first few books. So I want to make sure that I included them, even though I know like everybody has heard about these books. It's not like a surprise to anyone that these are books that I'm enjoying, because it seems like everyone enjoyed both of them. Like I said, I just wanted to kind of include them because they are current favorites. But I post videos every Friday. I think next week is going to be my highest and lowest rated books on my TBR. And yeah, I've just been really loving making videos, and I've been like learning new ways to edit videos and make thumbnails, and I'm just loving like this creative outlet that I almost never get to use on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know, I love making videos, I love talking about books, and I think this is just something that I like to do with my free time, and it keeps me from rambling and talking my boyfriend's ear off about books constantly. But if you guys like the video, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Like I said, I post every Friday, so I will see you guys next week.